Good morning, everybody. Today is Sunday, October 12th, 2025, and this is your Sunday Fun Day from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Hello to everybody. Carolyn Keel and Full Throated Motion and Nurse Not Lawyer, Chicago Marie, Gina Gilmore. God, there's so many people in the chat already that it's going too fast for me to read. Alicia and Susan D. Good morning, everybody. Hello to everyone who's been here before. Thank you so much for coming back. Hello to all the new folks. If this is your first time, you're in for a treat. Mary Jubinville, thank you so much for being a member for 5 months. Says, happy Sunday Fun Day, everybody. Josh, hope your mouth is feeling better. Yes, my mouth is feeling better. I had a little bit of oral surgery. They had to get rid of a bad tooth. Does it look like I'm a little bit lighter? Do I look like one tooth lighter today? That's because I am. Annalie Finch, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, love Sunday Fun Day. Right back at you, Annalie. All right. Best Nancy says, Josh, you don't look like a chipmunk. Well, that's good. For all the people that this is your first time, you're in for a treat. This is Sunday Fun Day, where we take your questions throughout the week and we answer them live. And we've got some other special treats for you. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former prosecutor with the LA District Attorney's Office. I had been there for about 10 years, and then I left to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney here in Los Angeles. This is Courtroom Confidential, where we try to present to you both sides of the courtroom. And as I said, this is Sunday Fun Day. All right, we're going to jump right into these things. If you haven't already, please take a moment right now, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share this with somebody. Arizona Gal, thank you for kicking us off, says, happy Sunday Fun Day, CC fam, watching live from Tucson for the first 30 minutes before I head to see counseling clients. Love fiercely because this all ends. That's very sweet and kind. Thank you, Arizona Gal. And I'll try to get the best 30 minutes in up front just for you. Stay to the end for announcements. We do have some interesting things to share with you, something that we're excited about. We've been working on for a long time as far as our conversation series goes. So I'll just kind of tease that, wait to the end. But let's jump into it, shall we? This is the part of the show, everybody, where Joshua has to show his technical expertise. So we will see how this goes.
Good morning, Joss and CCC crew. Michelle from Phoenix, Arizona. I was recently watching the death penalty phase of the Jose Soto Escalara trial, and the defense was giving their closing statement, which was pretty crazy in itself. I was actually pretty surprised that several times he basically told the jury if they voted for the death penalty that they would be murderers just like his client. I was also surprised that the judge and the prosecution didn't intervene until almost the end of the closing statements. It really bothered me, and I was just hoping to get your thoughts that it was like jury intimidation. So thanks, and happy Fun Day Sunday.
Thank you so much for kicking us off, Michelle from Phoenix, Arizona. Let's go ahead and put you on the map. We're actually going to double up this question because we got a few questions today that were similar to others. And in order to pack as many of them in as possible, I'm also going to give a shout out to Katrina from Montreal, Canada, who asked a very similar question about Jose Soto Escalara. Michelle Elise says, yes, that was nuts. I did not get to watch it live, but I have read some things about it. And I agree with you. I agree it was nuts. Lori says it was the most ridiculous closing I'd ever seen in my life, which makes me feel like I really did miss out. But the question is it illegal? Is it improper? Is there something wrong about it? And that specifically that quote that Michelle is giving us, that telling the jurors that they would be murderers just like the defendant if they decided to go ahead and give him the death penalty. And this is, of course, the man who was convicted of murdering the pregnant woman, Tanya Wise, who was just 23 years old, who was a woman he was having an affair with got her pregnant, and decided the best way out of that was just to murder her. Really brutal, really awful. And if you believe in the death penalty, if it's something we have on the books, you would expect it to be reserved for somebody as monstrous as this. But to get to the question, Michelle and Katrina, does this violate the law? Well, here's the interesting thing. The defense usually is going to get away with a lot more than the prosecution will, because the prosecution does not have the same abilities to appeal. In fact, they have very little ability to appeal. They can usually only appeal where something has so egregiously been done by the prosecution. But I guess I point that out to say that it would be a much different story if the prosecution were making similar arguments. It might be a mistrial. But with the defense making these types of arguments, the judge is just going to instruct jurors to ignore it, that it's improper, admonish the attorney, and move on. And my understanding here was that the prosecution allowed some of it to continue before they started to object. The other thing I think is important to point out is this was done during the penalty phase. The penalty phase is a little more Wild West than the guilt phase of a trial, because you're not dealing with the same kind of evidentiary rules. It is a little more kind of character evidence. It's a little more touchy-feely, but this is still, I think, entirely, if not illegal, improper. And what it violates is what is referred to, at least commonly in the law, as the golden rule. I mean, we all know the golden rule, but this idea specifically when it comes to arguments is the idea that you can never place jurors or ask jurors to place themselves in the position of the victim or in the position of the defendant. And it's an argument that many attorneys want to make, and you have to be very careful about not making that argument. So, many times you might want to, as a prosecutor, say something like, imagine her final moments. That is something that might be proper to do. Imagine her final moments. Imagine the fear that she was going through. But when you start saying things like, if you had this man grab you from behind and put a knife to your neck, how do you think you would be feeling? That's improper. That might even lead to a mistrial, because now what you're doing, and what we're always concerned with, is, are you asking jurors to base their verdict, to go back into that deliberation room with their emotions and their biases in mind, or with the law and the facts in mind? And if you're saying something like what I just said, or if you're saying something like, even in the penalty phase, if you decide to put this man to death, you're a murderer yourself, then yes, you're obviously trying to play upon their emotions, their biases, and that's improper. So is it going to be a huge problem in this case? Obviously not. They did find him guilty, and they did recommend the death penalty in this case. It's not going to be subject for appeal, because the prosecution doesn't have the ability and is not going to appeal. So it's kind of one of those things where a slippery defense attorney can get away with it. But it is something that he can be admonished for by the judge. And if it's ongoing conduct, I imagine he would get referred up to the state bar about it. It's certainly underhanded. It's certainly a little bit of dirty dealing, because the reason I outlined, you're playing dirty tricks when you're asking people to make decisions based upon their emotions. And it works both ways. It just seems as though the defense gets away with it more than the prosecution. But thank you so much, Michelle and Katrina, for kicking us off this morning. All right, let's keep it moving along here to our next question.
Hi, Josh and CC crew and everyone listening. This is Lynette from Exeter in England. Now, my question is about the Amish mother, Ruth Miller, who's accused of drowning her son for religious reasons. And David E. Taylor, who's a false prophet that has been found that he's been cruelly treating people in the name of religion. Now, I know on Wednesday Night Live, Dr. Berry was on, so this may cross over a bit, but I was just wondering, how on earth do you work out whether it is a true belief or a delusional belief? And at what point do you charge the person with murder or whatever the crime is? And at what point do you say it's insanity? And, you know, and then you get a whole group of people, you know, in cults and stuff, and whether that's different. So if you're acting out because you believe the cult leader, then whether that changes things from a legal perspective over there. It's all a bit confusing. And I just wondered what your thoughts were. Many thanks.
Well, many thanks to you, Lynette from Exeter, England. Let's put you on the map. Good to hear from you this morning. Hope that you're able to listen in. If you are, please say hi. Carolyn Keel, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, thank you, Josh, for answering our questions. I am more than happy to. Thank you guys for showing up, and thank you for asking the questions. Wasn't this such a fun Wednesday Night Live that we had with Dr. Patrice Berry? I want to thank her again. If you've had a chance to subscribe to her channel, please do. Next time you're on her channel, please send her a thank you from all of us. Send her some juice boxes just to confuse the heck out of her. But I thought it was such a fascinating conversation. I want to have her back on again. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And it sounds like Lynette did. And it was a conversation basically about what Lynette's question is. What I was so fascinated with this, because in this case with Ruth Miller, she's pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. Just the quick facts on this. This is the woman who drowned her own son in a lake. And when officers arrive, she is not hiding it. She's not ashamed. She's not trying to cover it up. She's not trying to blame it on anybody else. There she is. This is badge cam video. And it is haunting how calmly she's speaking to officers about what she did. And she tells them, yeah, well, we did it for God, and he's with God now. And I sent him to God, and something about a big fish swallowing her husband, and all of these, what I would say, and I think any person would say, sounds insane. Sounds like a person who's suffering from some sort of mental delusion at the time. But then I began to think about it. Well, wait a minute. She's basing this all on religion. And by the way, there are many different faiths, and some of those faiths, if you're not familiar with them, could sound bizarre, could sound delusional. I mean, there are people who believe in never getting medical attention. There are people who believe in handling snakes. There are people who believe that their religious leader rose from the dead. All sorts of varying things that many of us may even share some of those beliefs. So at what point do you go from a person who just happens to have tremendous faith into a person who's suffering from some sort of delusion? And we asked Dr. Berry this very question, and she said something I thought was interesting, that you have to go towards their leaders first and look at what are the leaders of their faith teaching, what are other people in their faith, what are their beliefs. In Ruth Miller's case, she and her husband were a complete anomaly, and even the leaders of her faith said they were way off track. Other people who practiced her faith said this is not what we believe. So this was it's certainly sounding like two people, and I thought that was interesting as well, two people who were in kind of a shared delusion about their faith. The other thing that you have to look to has to go towards the other thing that Lynette referenced, and that is David Taylor. He was recently arrested, indicted federally for forced labor and money laundering. He's one of the leaders of a church called the Kingdom of God Global Church. And he was getting people to, basically be his slaves and do work for him and fraudulently collect money. Looks like a lot of that money went towards golden buttons. And he's been criminally indicted. And the other thing Dr. Berry said is you got to look towards, is their belief system harmful? Do their leaders cause harm? Is it illegal conduct? Because then you might be talking about a cult. And a cult is very different, I think, than somebody's real faith. And that starts to step into the realm of illegal. End of the day, too, the government is going to have to make their own laws, very secular from religion. If a religion happens to violate those laws, then there's obviously going to be consequences. But I just thought this was a subject that I could have talked about forever. Simone B says she loved the Dr. Barry episode. If you guys haven't checked it out, it's on our channel right now. It was this last Wednesday. And I'm going to bug her again. I'm going to make her come back on. So thank you so much, the Off-White Lotus, for the super chat. Appreciate your generosity. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Laura Waldy gifted a membership, by the way. Thank you, Laura. All right, let's keep it rolling here.
Hi, Josh and friends. My name is Just a Crazy Jen in chat. My name is Jen. I'm from Moreau in Saratoga County, New York, in upstate New York in the Adirondacks. My question is regarding a local case to us from the Canadian gentleman who I hesitate to call that, named Luciano Frattolin, who is alleged to have murdered his 9-year-old daughter back here in July of 2025. He's charged with second-degree murder, and I was hoping to show up to the court case in Essex County on, I believe, in January of next year. I was just curious, what should I know before going to witness my first court case? And also, what kind of a sentence could he be facing here in comparison to in a Canadian prison where he did commit that over the border? Thank you so much. I appreciate all you do. Bye.
Jen, thank you so much for calling in. I don't think we've heard from you before. We're putting Moreau, New York on the map. I got to tell you, I had to search for it, but there you are. Thank you so much. And an interesting case. This was another heartbreaking case. These cases with the little kids, I'm telling you, I will never get over how difficult these are to talk about. But this person here, who, if true, is just a real monster. He and the motives are not entirely clear. I don't know if this was a custody dispute. It's sounding like that. If there was another reason for it, but he takes it upon himself on July 19th of 2025 in Ticonderoga, New York, to drown his own daughter, 9-year-old Melina Frattolin. There's a picture. Obviously, we blurred out her face. You know, this stuff kills me. This stuff kills me that you'll always find these photos where they just look happy, looks like life is normal, and then to just commit something this evil. I'll never get over it. So he's accused, like I said, of drowning her to death. And then concealing her body. And then he had some elaborate story about her being abducted. After a man search was conducted, they were able to get to the bottom of it. Like I said, his name is Luciano Frattolin. He's from Canada, but he's being charged and will be tried in New York. Trial is set to begin in January of 2026. So what kind of a sentence is he looking at? Jen wants to know. Well, in New York, they don't have the death penalty, but for first-degree murder, you're looking at 25 to life. And they have the concept of aggravated murder. We've talked about that before in other cases. The Charlie Kirk case out of Utah is an aggravated murder case. An aggravated murder opens up life without parole. And the aggravating circumstance, I think clearly applicable here, would be when the victim is under the age of 14. His daughter was age 9. So if they decide to add that allegation and that's proven true, he could be looking at life without parole in the New York prison system. So Jen plans on attending some of that. I think it's a fascinating experience. I encourage anybody to go to your local courts and just check out what's happening in a criminal courtroom. I think you'll find it really fascinating to be inside there. There's really nothing that can describe what it's like. And it doesn't even have to be a high profile case, but Jen, please report back to us as to what you have found. What do you need to know beforehand? I don't know. I guess just kind of, I would say arrive early because there's many other cases that might get called that day that could be fascinating as well. You might be in store for a lot of waiting around for his case to be called. It might be super quick when it does get called. but just try to soak it in as much as possible. It's just a really, we watch so many of these trials, we talk about them, but being in the room with these people and having these cases called and watching the system actually take place really is a fascinating experience. So good for you, Jen. From Moreau, New York, thank you so much for calling in. All right, let's keep it rolling here.
Hi, Joshua, and the Courtroom Confidential listeners. My name's Candace Plumley, and I live in Green Valley, Arizona, which is 20 miles south of Tucson and not too far from the Mexican border. My question is about the Sullivan case in Connecticut, where the woman is accused of keeping her stepson isolated and abused for more than 2 decades. And you mentioned recently that she was wanting his medical records released, and that that needed to be done because of her right to confront her accuser. But also in that same motion, I believe that they're asking for the address of that young man to be disclosed. And shouldn't that young man have the right to keep that information from her? I would certainly hope so. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Candace, thank you so much for calling in. Candace from Green Valley, Arizona. Let's put you on the map. There you are. Yes, very close to the border. Little Miss Red Velvet says, Josh, because of your encouragement last time, I did that here in the UK. Typical of me, ended up in a tough one involving a child, but it was so interesting, different to the US. Thank you so much for doing that. Little Miss Red Velvet. I know you've called in before. I'm trying to remember exactly where you called in from, but I'm so glad that you did that. I love, I feel like there's so many fascinating cases that go on that we never hear about, and they're taking place every single day to empty courtrooms throughout this country and the UK and many other countries. And I'm glad that you were able to experience that. Candace, to your question, we're talking about Kimberly Sullivan. Yes, this is the woman who's accused of essentially torturing her stepson for decades. Since the age of 11, he was kept inside this house of horrors. I think we have some photographs from inside the home. I mean, it's just horrific. Just what this person had to live with for 2 decades. And slow starvation during that time too. Not only kept from the outside world, kept from an education, kept from his loved ones, in interaction with anyone in the outside, but was fed, I think, like 2 sandwiches a day for 20 something years, to the point that when he was rescued at the age of 32 by lighting a fire in the home, hoping that somebody would come save him or he would perish in the fire, he weighed under 90 pounds. 32-year-old man weighing under 90 pounds is near the point of starvation. I mean, it is starvation, but near the point of, I imagine, dying or having irreparable harm from starvation. But he has, since that time, my understanding is, even changed his name. He goes by an assumed name in court documents, and he's at an undisclosed location. All completely understandable. Now, recently, her defense attorney made a motion to have all of his medical reports turned over. That they are absolutely entitled to. I take no quarrel with any of that. They're absolutely entitled to that for the reason that you outlined, Candace. Everybody has a constitutional right to confront and cross-examine the witnesses and the evidence against them. And if you're going to charge somebody with a crime, kidnapping, false imprisonment, I don't care what it is, you need to present all that evidence to them. You don't get to charge them with a crime and then hide the ball. And the medical evidence in this case is going to be crucially important. And the defense is entitled to it. Full stop. What they're not entitled to, though, is something that could be for the purpose of harassment. And I'm not saying that they have those types of motives, but there's no reason why they need his current location. Now, they're entitled to try to interview him. And I've handled many cases like this. This comes up quite a bit in gang cases. when I was a prosecutor, I had handled gang cases all the time. And many times the victims, we would redact their information from all of the police reports before we turned it over. And the defense would always make an issue about this. We don't even know who these people are. We don't have their names. We want all this information. And we would say, we will make them available to you if you ever want to interview them. Now, anybody can refuse to be interviewed by the defense, and they know that, and they know that as well. So they can make him available if he wants to speak to them for an interview, but they don't have to turn over his current information and where he lives. And I think the judge should do the right thing and protect that information, because he's suffered enough and gone a long way to hide himself from this monster, and from the outside world too. He doesn't need his name out there being harassed. So there's no reason for it. And I hope that the judge does the right thing in this case. But they are entitled to everything but that. So great question, Candace from Green Valley, Arizona. We appreciate you calling. I love this already. So many all over the world and so many smart questions already. I'll say it again. I've said it before. Smartest community on YouTube. All right, you guys, where are we going to next?
Hey Josh, my name is Christina Wiley and I'm from Hot Springs, Arkansas. I have a question about a personal experience that I've had. My mom was killed on Mother's Day in 2016 by a man that was intoxicated and under the influence of drugs. He rammed his truck into a parked car where she was sleeping at in a tent, and it rolled on top of her, and she passed away from that. About a year later, the prosecutor called me and told me I had about an hour to decide if I want to take the plea, which is manslaughter, and he could have gotten up to 25 years, or if I wanted to take it to trial. But he scared me and said that he could walk because he was under the influence and wasn't in his right state of mind. So I took the plea deal. But my question is, do you see a lot of that, or when you were a prosecutor, putting pressure, I guess, on victim families to decide if they want to take a plea deal or not? And I didn't have any other family to ask, so I just went ahead and took the plea, and he ended up getting 15 years. But he didn't get any charges for trying to cover up the crime or anything. But thanks. Bye.
Christina from Hot Springs, Arkansas. First of all, let me say how touched I am that you were willing to share that personal tragedy with us. And I, our hearts break for you. You said it happened in 2016. I imagine that is still a wound that you carry around that hurts. And, I think we're all wishing you love and continued healing from all of that. And to your question, first of all, I think there's Hot Springs. We'll put you on the map. To your question, no, that's not right. It's not right to call up a victim's family with 1 hour to make a decision of this kind of magnitude. And you should have been a part of that process all along and a part of the thinking all along. I've had to make really difficult phone calls myself as a prosecutor. I've had to have really difficult conversations. Many times it leaves the victim's families feeling upset and betrayed and hurt. And it's difficult for a prosecutor because when you're in doing a plea deal, it's always going to be something less than the maximum. That's the nature of it. And it's hard to have a conversation because a victim's family might feel that you feel that their loved one is worth less than the maximum. And that's not what it's about at all. It's about making a decision on what you can prove, the difficulties of the case. What are the chances that you don't prevail? I mean, what prosecutors are most concerned with is losing outright, and then somebody gets away with it. So sometimes you are making a difficult decision to plead somebody to something less than the maximum, because at least you know that you've got a solid conviction on that person, and that's most important. But I think a real shortcoming with law enforcement and prosecutors is the lack of training and education on what I'll call bedside manner. And that is just the idea that you're dealing with real people's lives here. This isn't about winning or losing. It's not about the name on a file. It's about real people's lives and understanding how you're making a decision and it's your job and you're going to move on from that to another case in a few days or a week. That person is going to live with that decision for the rest of their life, and that you should appreciate the magnitude of that and have a little compassion for what they're going through. So I'm sorry that that horrible experience was made even more frustrating by the way that the prosecutor handled it. And also, I'm a little surprised that it was all kind of put on your shoulders. Like, what do you want to do? I mean, I hope he would have said, this is what we plan on doing, or here's where we're leaning, unless you've got some real strong feelings. Otherwise, this is the plan. That's usually the conversations I would have. But thank you so much, Christina. Again, our heart goes out to you, and I appreciate you being so trusting of us and this community to share that story with us. All right, let's move it along here. Not my fault. I'm pressing buttons. All the buttons pressed.
Aloha, everyone. This is Dulcie from Honolulu, Hawaii. My question is about Ruth Miller. Will the prosecution or the defense have to keep her religious beliefs or motives out of the trial, similar to the attempted honor killing of Fatima Ali? I hope this gets Hawaii on the map. Mahalo.
Dulcie, it does get Hawaii on the map. Honolulu, Hawaii. Thank you so much for calling in. Is that our first one from Hawaii? Oh, yeah. We should have like a little firework display or something like that. First caller from Hawaii. Thank you so much, Dulcie, with a great question too. What a smart question. This is not the typical kind of cocktail party conversations that you have. So I really appreciate you thinking about this so deeply, Dulcie. So your question is, in the Fatima Ali case, this was the prosecution of Ihsan and Zara Ali. You remember this horrific case? It was the kind of honor killing case. It was described as a young woman was attacked by her own parents because she didn't want to move to, I think it was Iraq, and marry some man that she never met before. And so she kind of had rebelled against her family, and they, according to the prosecution, attempted to take her life in the efforts to make her do that. They were convicted. They were not convicted of the attempted murder. I should have taken better notes on what they were convicted of. But the father is going to see prison time, and it's a horrific case. And the daughter, I think, is got a, if she ever wants to heal her relationship with her parents, it's going to take a long time. But to Dulcie's point, the religious aspects of that case were kept out. And I, at the time, and still do believe that that was the right thing, that you didn't want jurors making a decision based upon prejudices, perhaps, or misunderstandings or biases against their religious beliefs, but on the facts of the case. And in that case, they said, we're not going to get into this whole arranged marriage thing. We're just going to get into the idea that she didn't want to go back to Iraq and be forced by her family to do so based upon religious beliefs. So Dulcie says, well, what about Ruth Miller? That whole case is about her religious beliefs. Is that case going to see the same kind of rulings by the judge as far as keeping the religious aspects of it out? And I think no, and the difference being she is putting her religious beliefs squarely at issue by raising the insanity defense. She's pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Well, you're going to have to explain what you was going through your mind, what you were believing at the time that made you unable to appreciate the consequences of your actions. And that just happens to be her own religious beliefs. So I think that's the big difference maker, and why we will hear about her religious beliefs there. But you can be sure that during the voir dire and jury selection in that case, they're going to talk a lot about religion and about how they shouldn't be basing their decision, the jurors, on any kind of biases towards her religious beliefs, but on the idea of whether or not she was suffering from some sort of mental delusion at the time that was made it unable for her to appreciate that what she was doing was wrong. It's going to be a fascinating case, by the way. If you listen to Dr. Patrice Berry talking about that, there's some arguments there for her insanity. Gisela, Grizzly True Crime is in the house, everybody. Just saying hi, been lurking. Haha, happy Sunday, fun day, everybody. Happy Sunday to you, Gisela. Thank you so much for talking by. Taking you on a walk. I love it. I love how health conscious you are. And I'm glad that we are the way that you are able to motivate yourself to keep walking. I'll try to make it a long one so you have a good walk. Not so much. Tiffany's giving me a look. All right. But thank you so much, Dulcie from Hawaii, our first Hawaiian caller. Appreciate you. Let's keep it moving along here.
Hi, Josh and all my Courtroom Confidential family. Hope you're all happy and well. I love the show. Never miss an episode, although often late due to being in the UK. Just a quick question. Do you think you will get to the UK this year for CrimeCon UK? I'm definitely going and would love to meet you and would love to meet any other UK buddies on here. I have got friends, but this is like another part of my life. And I don't know anyone else who's into it as I am. So keep in touch. Let's all go. Speak to you soon.
Simone calling from Manchester, England. Simone called back to let us know she's calling from Manchester, but we appreciate you, Simone. Will we get to CrimeCon UK? First of all, CrimeCon has got 2 dates in the UK coming up in 2026. First in hold on, I'll tell you when we put up the graphic here. First in Birmingham. I can't see the dates, but Birmingham and London, 2 dates next year. I would really love to, is the answer to your question, Simone. I would really love to. Here's the problem with the Ritter household is we've created quite the tribe for ourselves here. And it's me and Tiff and 3 little ones, and getting that entire crew on a plane to England might prove to be difficult, not for lack of desire. And I'll tell you this, I'm not going to rule it out entirely. If CrimeCon were to call us and say, hey, we want you to be a speaker in the UK, I think we would probably try to find a way to do it. But it's an undertaking. Oh, here we go. Birmingham is April 25th and London is October 3rd and 4th. October 3rd and 4th. I don't know. Maybe we'll have our self together there by the time London rolls around. Will you make the trip down to London from Manchester, Simone? If you do, maybe we'll meet you there. I can't promise. If I promise, I'll get in trouble with the missus. But it's a real fun opportunity. And I know Joseph Scott Morgan, if you guys are a big fan of his, goes every year, and he says he loves it because it's a little smaller and more intimate and you get more time to talk to people. Wendy Turner, thank you so much for becoming a member. Welcome aboard. You're going to love it. Thank you. Teresa Ball, thank you so much for becoming a member. You're going to love it as well. So glad to have you guys join the crew. All right, Simone, thank you so much. Calling from Manchester, England. Let's fuel up the jet. Where are we going to next here? Hold on. Here we go. Hold on. All right, I got it.
Hi Josh, Cat Flat Carnage here again with a second question, still in Stilton in the UK. If a public defender cannot stomach the crime that their defendant has done, are they able to withdraw or resign from the case? Surely being forced to defend someone you find morally reprehensible could affect the quality of defense that is given?
Cat Flat Carnage. Thank you so much. Calling from Stilton, England. Let's put you on the map. Maybe you'll be at CrimeCon this year as well. We should put a little UK crew together. Great question though. I love this. I get the question all the time, you know, how do you defend people, and can you turn down cases? As a private attorney, it's much easier. I can turn down every case that walks through my door if I want to, for any reason I want to. It's a business relationship you're entering into, and no one is compelled to enter into that relationship. They don't have to hire me, and I don't have to be hired. The public defender's office is a whole different ball of wax. They are government employees, and they are assigned cases, and they have their entire obligation is to defend the indigent and those who don't have attorneys. So they don't have the same luxury of turning down cases. Their office has to accept those cases, and they get really bad cases. I mean, a lot of these crimes that go to the public defender's office are the worst of the worst type of stuff. And to your question, can a public defender turn down a case? The answer is yes. Internally, they can go to their supervisors and say, listen, there is a reason specific to this case that I don't want to do it. But I will tell you, in my relationships and speaking with public defenders, they don't do that because it is kind of seen as part of the job. To them, it would be like a detective saying, I don't want to show up to that crime scene. I just can't handle it. Can a detective decide to do that? Sure. But it's kind of part of the job. And what you take on is that you're going to take it from the ugliest of ugly and the worst of the worst. You're going to handle those things. And you certainly don't want to get a reputation. I'm sure that they've done it. And I'm sure that there are situations, but you don't want to give a reputation. I will tell you a little story. I don't want to name names, but I'm sure you could find it with a little bit of Google sleuthing, but it was a case here in Los Angeles involving a public defender. This was back in 2017, and she was actually suspended by the state bar for 30 days because of her conduct. And what she did is she had a trial set on, say, Wednesday. Well, on that Thursday, she had an MRI scheduled. She had been having back issues, and she had an MRI scheduled. But instead of telling the judge that, you know, leading up to that, by the way, Your Honor, and this comes up all the time, you've got schedules and doctor's appointments and things in your life. You let the judge know, yeah, I know we're scheduling this for this date, but just so you know, that Friday, I have a doctor's appointment. And the judges will say, sure, fine, we'll handle it. She doesn't let the judge know until like that Wednesday. They're starting trial. She says, I can't come in tomorrow. I've got a doctor's appointment, an MRI. And the judge tells her, no, that's not how this works. Reschedule it. Fits are thrown, tears are shed. They take a moment to pause to talk more about this. I mean, they've literally got like a jury waiting. She asks, and this is where it gets fantastic. She asks the judge if she can use the restroom in the back hallway of the courtroom there. In the courtrooms in Los Angeles, you have the jury room is in the back, and there's usually a bathroom back there that the jurors can use. And sometimes when they don't have a jury trial going on, they'll let the attorneys use that bathroom in the back hallway. She goes back there to use the restroom. After about 10 minutes, the judge says, where is she? They go back to look for her. She's not in the bathroom, and she had used the back hallway to go back up the stairs to her office, and she had barricaded herself in her office and told her supervisor that she's not doing the trial. Good luck to her client, and she's leaving to go take a personal day and go to her MRI appointment. And the public defender's office had to call down to the court and let the judge know that, and she basically abandoned her client. Now, what she really got in trouble for was the abandonment of the client. And so that's why I think it kind of goes back to your question, Tracy, that yeah, you can make decisions where, hey, I can't handle this, but you can't abandon that person. I mean, she was at this point pot invested. You're at the point of trials about to begin. You don't then get to have some sort of moral crisis about the whole thing, and you certainly don't get to hide from the judge. It was a pretty incredible story that amongst our local community here, we had a good chuckle about. Anyhow, thank you for that, Tracy from Stilton, England. Let's fuel up the jet and see where we're going to next here.
And I have a question that may be a bit premature and may be answered by the time you do the next Sunday Fun Day. But I'm actually watching a replay of the press conference where they're announcing the arrest of the person who started the Palisades fire. And they have charged him with something, I don't remember the exact wording of the charge, but it's malicious destruction of property by means of a fire, something like that. They did say that 12 people perished in the fire, and I'm wondering why there's no murder charge going along with this, and if one will eventually be levied against this man. But I would think that they would do that right away because they know that people perish as a result of the fire. So anyway, that's my question. And thanks again for Sunday Fun Day, which is the best thing in the true crime space. And you and Tiff and Kaylin all work so hard on this, and we all appreciate it so much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you, Maureen. You heard it from Maureen from Monterey, the best thing in the true crime space. We appreciate that. And that's because of all of you guys and the wonderful questions that you asked. And here's another really, really good question. If you've been watching the news broke this last week that they had made an arrest and a federal indictment against this man here. His name is Jonathan Rinderknecht. He's actually from Florida, but he had been living in the Los Angeles area as a Uber driver. And Maureen's question is, why hasn't he been charged with murder? That fire, the Palisades fire, killed 12 people, and it was one of the biggest disasters in Southern California. It was horrific. I mean, homes lost, communities destroyed, families, livelihoods, everything. Horrible, horrible, horrific. Right now, he is facing federal charges for destruction of property by means of fire. He's looking at 20 years just based on that charge. But Maureen asked a question that a lot of us have been asking. Why not murder? 12 people. Look at that photo. That looks like a bomb went off. I mean, it's horrific. Just entire neighborhoods leveled to the ground. Homes lost, memories lost, and even lives lost. And Maureen is asking the same question a lot of us has been asking. Lives are lost. Why wasn't he charged with murder? Well, I'll say this. One, the federal prosecutors, when announcing these charges, did say they may be adding charges. So who knows? They may be looking into this and trying to find a theory that they feel comfortable with proceeding on. Here's where the issue arises. He didn't technically start the Palisades fire per se. He started a fire called the Lockman fire, which was close to the same area. That fire was started on New Year's Day. They absolutely can prove through cell phone evidence, witness identifications, other things that he started that fire. Firefighters responded to that fire and put out that fire, so they thought. What they didn't realize is that that fire had continued to smolder undetected in the root system of the forest area where that fire took place. And that 7 days later, on January 7th, we had high winds here in Southern California, and those reignited that Lockman fire, then causing the Palisades fire, which went on to have the incredible destruction of property and left 12 people dead. And there's a question as to foreseeability and causation. In other words, the questions they're asking themselves is, was it foreseeable to Rinderknecht or a reasonable person in his position that starting this fire could have led to the kind of destruction and loss of life that we saw in the Palisades fire? And is there a direct causal relationship between the fire he started and the Palisades fire? I believe the answer to both of those questions is yes. First of all, he didn't know how out of control the Palisades or the Lockman fire could have gotten. The fire started from that same geographic location that led to the Palisades fire. So to say, well, I started this fire way over here, I didn't know it was going to burn up a community over there. That's exactly what happens with fire. They spread for miles. So as far as foreseeability, I don't really see the answer there. And as far as causation, he is the but-for cause. It is the starting of that Lockman fire that left the smoldering roots that then ignited the Palisades fire. Had he not started the Lockman fire, the Palisades fire would not have occurred. That is their own case. And he's being charged with the property damage in the Palisades fire. So you're already getting past those questions by charging him with the property damage, why not for the loss of life? My answer to you, Maureen, is I don't know. I don't know if that's forthcoming. I don't know if there's hand-wringing taking place, but he has not been charged with murder yet. He's just been charged with federal arson, essentially, which is no small thing. He's looking at 20 years, but you know, we've seen cases like this before where people get charged with murder and they look at life without parole. And this guy, by the way, this wasn't like some one-off for him. He had apparently had a fascination with fire. He had been obsessed with it. He had been listening to a French rap song about fire. He had done these are these AI generated images that he had on his phone of like fires. I mean, he's kind of a pyro sicko. That's my official psychiatric evaluation of him. You can tell Dr. Barry that. I call him a pyro sicko. Really sad stuff, though. The people whose lives are still trying to recover from that. So I hope they do the right thing, the prosecutors in this case. But thank you, Maureen from Monterey, for calling with the excellent question. All right. Let's keep it rolling here.
Hi, Courtroom Confidential. This is Sonia from Chicago. And thank you for the awesome stream tonight with Dr. Barry. And that got me thinking about the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case. And I don't think this voicemail can be long enough to go through everything. But this woman has been through so much. This is a Boston case, and it's getting a lot of attention. My question to you, and I'm sorry to not go into all of it. I'll try to email something to Kaylin so she has it. But if you have postpartum and you try to medicate yourself with alcohol, does that lessen the responsibility of the postpartum or the legitimacy of it? I hope that makes sense. This is a very interesting case. I don't think we've talked about it much. Thank you. Have a great night. I love you guys. Have a good rest of your Sunday, I meant. Okay, bye.
Nick Starro, thank you so much, my friend, for being here. Appreciate it. 700 of you haven't hit the thumbs up. That's right. He's doing the math. And there's about 700 missing. Thank you so much, Nick, for stopping by and saying hi. Big fans. Everybody say hi to Nick. And Sonia, thank you so much for the question. Sonia from Chicago, Illinois, putting you on the map once again. So this is a case that I have not followed all that closely. There's a lot of stuff that happens. We try to make the best choices that we can. And this is one that kind of has slipped through the cracks, but it's a very fascinating case out of Boston. This is Officer Kelsey Fitzsimmons. She's 28 years old. Story goes, and if I get the facts of this wrong, don't come after me with pitchforks, but she Her fiance was a man by the name of Justin Elayan, probably got that completely wrong, who she had a child with. That relationship turned incredibly sour. He got a restraining order against her, and the fellow officers of her, she's a police officer, were serving her with the restraining order on June 30th in North Andover, Massachusetts. In serving her with the restraining order, they had asked her to go upstairs. They were making sure to recover all of her weapons because she's an officer. She's got service weapons and probably other weapons. And they had also asked Justin, I'm not sure if he was married or fiance. I think it's fiance, to come in and collect his items. And this is oftentimes what will happen. Officers will be present during the service of restraining order and to allow the person seeking the protection to safely come in and recover their items so that there's not some big brawl and things turn very violent. Well, despite their best efforts, there's two stories here. The officer's story is that Kelsey pulls a weapon upstairs on Officer Patrick Noonan. He is heard yelling, "Kelsey, don't do it." He testifies that she shoots at him and then he fires 2 shots back at her, one of them hitting her in the chest. Her story is that she had been suffering from severe postpartum depression, that she had earlier while she was pregnant responded to a murder-suicide involving a mother and a 9-month-old child that had left her emotionally scarred and damaged and in a highly fragile state, and that she was actually attempting suicide, and that her statement through her attorney is that she would never point a weapon at another fellow officer, that she was pointing the weapon at her own head, and the weapon went off, and then he fired back at her. Well, she's looking at charges for the assault on the other officer. Now, I hope I got most of that right. Now, Sonia's question, though, is if she was suffering from postpartum depression, or she was even trying to treat that through self-medication by means of alcohol, does any of that mitigate her responsibility for the crime? There is a concept in criminal law, in defense, called voluntary intoxication. And it exists in California. I'm not sure if that same kind of concept exists in Massachusetts, but it exists in many jurisdictions. And it's the idea that for specific intent crimes, if you were so intoxicated that you couldn't form that specific intent, that can mitigate that element. So, for instance, in, let's say murder, that's not what we're dealing with here, but in murder, you have to have the specific intent to kill, okay? General intent crimes are things like battery, okay? Battery is the unlawful touching without permission of another person. Battery just requires that you do it willfully, meaning someone didn't push you and you landed on the other person, therefore committing a battery, but you willfully, through your own actions, committed the battery. But it doesn't have to show that you specifically intended to batter that person. That's called a general intent crime. I hope I'm not getting too confusing about this. I'm trying to keep it simple. But specific intent crimes will say in the crime, with the intent to cause great bodily injury, with the intent to kill, with the intent to, light a fire, whatever it is, it will list the specific intent. Voluntary intoxication can be an argument against that. My client couldn't form the intent to kill, the intent to attempt to kill, because they were so intoxicated at the time. Now, something important about this to understand is just because you have alcohol in your system doesn't make you eligible for that defense. So in other words, you can't just be, I was drunk, I was high, therefore I can't be guilty of murder. It has to be proven, and by the way, the burden shifts to the defense to prove that you were so intoxicated that you literally could not form that specific intent. So we're talking about somebody who's so drunk that they really don't even know that they're pointing a gun at someone or that they're trying to kill someone. They're so intoxicated that they can't be really held responsible for their actions, and more specifically form that specific intent. Will that work here? I don't think so. I think it will certainly be arguments that her attorneys will make, but does that rise to the level of a defense to this crime? I don't think so. Same with her postpartum depression. I think it will all kind of go towards their overall arguments as to her mental state at the time, but I don't know how persuasive those will be. But great question, Sonia. I know it's a case that's a lot are interested in, and we will try to continue to follow that case more closely. Wow, not so simple. I get it. Love your answers. I hope I didn't confuse you more, and I appreciate the question. All right, let's keep it moving. Are we enjoying this? We're really getting a lot of variety of questions here. I appreciate it. And a lot of variety of on the map today. We're all over the place. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Here we go.
Hi, this is Jim from Wasilla, Alaska. Just wanted to let you know how much I enjoy your show. I love the way that you get right to the point. You stick to the facts. You make it entertaining without being long-winded. And we appreciate your show and look forward to seeing more. Thanks.
Jim, you're the best. First of all, one of my dudes, Jim, calling in. And secondly, putting Alaska on the map. This is our first caller from Alaska, right? I think I actually called out Alaska. I think I actually called out Hawaii too. And now in one day, we knock them both out. Jim from Wasilla, Alaska. One of my dudes, thank you so much for calling in. Thank you so much for the kind words. And thank you so much for putting Alaska on the map. Appreciate it. Dude crew, says Sue. All right, let's keep it rolling here.
Hi, Josh and chat. It's Jill here again from Manchester, England, otherwise known as Little Miss Red Velvet. Josh, we have a really interesting case here, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. She was 3 years old at the time, from a holiday villa in Portugal. Polish national Julia van der Veld came forward as an adult saying she was Madeleine, contacting the parents, harassing them with voicemails, and allegedly approached the eldest daughter. She is on trial in Manchester now because she is not Madeleine McCann. I thought it would be something interesting and different for our overseas and UK members. Look forward to speaking to you all and seeing you all in the chats in the next episode.
Jill from Manchester. Let's put Manchester on the map, otherwise known as Little Miss Red Velvet. Thank you so much, Jill, for calling in. Lala Saleh 164. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that with the sleepy kitty there. This case, I'm so glad. This is great. We get asked sometimes, why do we ever cover cases from outside of the US? Yes, we do. We would love to. It's just sometimes they're not on our radar. So thank you so much, Jill, for putting this one on our radar. This is obviously the McCann case of Madeleine McCann is obviously a case that if you're a true crime follower, you've heard of before. It's one of those cases that's just, in the Nightmare Hall of Fame. This is Madeleine, who went missing in 2007. Her family was traveling to Portugal. What a beautiful little girl. Horrible nightmare of a story. Her family is there with other folks. There are other children, in fact, in the room, in the hotel room, and the family is having dinner, and it was described as being just a few yards away. And they would go in to check on the room, And one time they go in to check on the room and Madeleine's gone, and the family loses their minds and they go looking for her. And she's never been found. And she's likely, tragically murdered, but her body never showed up. And, one of those cases that just it comes up every now and then, makes the news for one reason or another, and just reminds us of what this family is, the tragedy they're continuing to deal with. I did look up an article, kind of where are they now, the mother, Kate and Gary, and they had some really incredible words for what they've gone through, and just saying how they've managed to kind of still find joy in their life, and I'm glad to hear that. But they still have to suffer through things like what Jill is describing to us here. A woman from Poland by the name of, where is it here? Julia Wandelt, who's 24 years old, has been stalking them, saying since 2022, she's been contacting the family saying she's Madeleine, and somehow managed to get a hold of the mother's phone number. And then in December of 2024, she shows up to their home demanding a DNA test. Is this her? Who is this? This is Julia? Oh, wow. So she's on trial now in Manchester for stalking. Apparently she was calling them something like 50 plus times a day. Really awful. I mean, these people have been through so much, and then to just have, a person who's obviously unwell. I don't know if she's just a hurtful person or if she's just an unwell person. But she's, been making their lives miserable, and they've had to testify against her. And not only, does DNA prove she's not Madeleine, she's not even the same age as Madeleine would have been. I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous. And it's just awful that these poor people have to go through that. So that trial, I think, is ongoing. And if we get a result on that, we'll let you all know. But I'm so glad, Jill, that you put that on our radar. Thank you for sharing that with us. Out of Manchester, UK. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Fuel up the jet, everybody.
Hi, Josh, Tiffany, Kaylin, CC crew. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Sunday fun day. This is Tendai from Johannesburg, South Africa. And I'd just like to comment on something that was stated by Dr. Berry in the interview this week, and just follow up with what can be done next. It's very difficult to understand why people don't get the help that they need before it goes too far. What I've been thinking about for the past couple of weeks is the young lady from the Ukraine, Iryna, and how the gentleman or the man that murdered her did call the police and say that he heard voices and that there was someone controlling him and those sorts of things. So if someone comes to officials like that and he's not helped, what are the steps that can be taken, whether it's through government or anything? I don't know how crime.
Tendai from Johannesburg, South Africa. Let's put South Africa on the map. Thank you so much for this call. And this is a big question. This is a question that I certainly am not qualified to give all the answers to, and certainly not on as quickly. I mean, this is something that I think that a lot of people are trying to solve. But Tendai's question is about, and not so much about this case in particular, but she uses this case for as an example. But we're talking about the horrific murder of Iryna Zarutska, who's 23 years old. She was a Ukrainian refugee. There she is there. And she was murdered by a man by the name of DeCarlos Brown. And we've all seen the video. It's horrific. She was completely unprovoked attack on a light rail train in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was stabbed from behind, stabbed in the neck, died alone and scared. Horrible nightmare. And this is a woman who, was here in this country to try to seek refuge. And so, there are many different angles you could take on this case. But one that people have been talking about is mental health. And what do you do? This man, DeCarlos Brown, had been in and out of jail many, many times before. He had had 14 prior arrests, many of them for violence. And his mental health issues were well known to the judicial system and to his family. And the question is, well, why? Why is he out? Why is he walking amongst us? Why is he out there able to harm someone like this? And we're all getting down to that question of how could this have been prevented? Now, I'm a strong believer in that, bail laws should be taken more seriously. That, when somebody has exhibited violence in the past, that should be taken into consideration. That we do need to do more and be more serious about protecting our communities. But that's so easily said, because where do you put people? Because what we've started to do is fill up our jails with people who are suffering from mental health issues. And that's not what they're for. And that's not what the deputies who run the jails are qualified to handle. These are not mental health institutions. They're jails. They're for people who've committed crimes. Well, what do you do? Well, we don't have state hospitals anymore. And maybe that is a big problem. And again, this is like one of those things where I don't know how you solve this, but I know that the initial question, my answer is you don't let them walk around. When someone's exhibited violence and mental health unrest, until they're able to get treatment and be safe, they shouldn't be walking amongst us. But as far as the question of where do you put them and how do you treat them goes, I'll leave that to people with a higher pay grade than mine. And then it's also the idea of how are you holding people against their will? How are you taking away somebody's freedom if they haven't committed a crime? What kind of laws do we need to put on the books? There's certain things, like in California, we have what's called a 5150 hold, where somebody can be held for, up to 72 hours based upon their going through some sort of mental health crisis. But beyond that, you have to start looking at the Constitution. You can't just hold someone because you feel they're dangerous if they've committed no crime. So how do we talk about civil commitments, conservatorships? Where do you put these people? How do you treat them? How do you hold them against their will? It's big, big, big questions with no simple answers. But thank you, Tendai, for even getting us talking about it. It is a tragedy, and I hope that we're able to come to some better solutions before we start to see something like this happen again. That is Tendai calling from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you so much with the question. Courtroom Confidential, heard of them before, just gifted 5 memberships. So enjoy, everybody. Whoever received those, welcome aboard. All right.
Hi, Josh. This is Pam calling from Michigan. I have a question concerning the upcoming Donna Adelson sentencing. I heard on a podcast that it was updated to be on Monday the 13th. Defense hypothetically could be asking for non-consecutive terms based on her age, and was wondering, there have been other people who have been convicted of murder and had, 5 murders times 5 sentences of life, so technically 5 life terms. What is the difference, and why would they use Donna's age as a please don't over sentence her? It seems that's how I am taking it anyway. Was wondering what your opinion was on that and what your thoughts were. I mean, murder is murder in my opinion, and was just wondering what your thoughts were. Thanks again for everything, and talk soon. Bye.
Pam from Michigan, let's put you on the map. Pam says murder is murder in my book. Well, it is in my book too, Pam, and I agree with you, and I think this is an excellent question. She's asking about Donna Adelson, and her defense attorney's asking to have her prison time essentially run concurrently rather than consecutively given her age. And Pam wants to know, is that something that's appropriate to consider at all? Well, I do not practice the law in Florida, but that does not stop me because I can always phone a friend.
And thank you for your question. I'm Dave Aronberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, a.k.a. the Florida lawman. And Josh asked me to answer it for you. So Donna Adelson will get life in prison because she was convicted of first-degree murder, and that's a capital crime in Florida. So that means you have two possible options, the death penalty or life in prison. Well, the death penalty was off the table, so she's getting life in prison. It is mandatory. They can try to say age, all these other excuses. The judge's hands are tied. So she's getting life sentence for the murder of my friend Danny Markel. She also was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. That one is a first-degree felony. You can get up to 30 years in prison for that. And then there's solicitation to commit murder, which is also a first-degree felony, punishable by up to 30 years. So she's done. She's going to spend the rest of her days in prison, just like her son Charlie. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
No, it does not. Thank you so much, Dave Aronberg, everybody. If you, he's got a website, we'll put that up. He's also, you'll see him on different YouTube channels. I think we'll try to find those. If you ever get a chance to tell him thank you for coming on and giving us an answer to that question, please do. Love Dave, and he was a state attorney. He was like the prosecutor, the elected DA for a county in Florida. So I'm like, I don't know anybody more qualified to answer this question for Pam than Dave is. And there you go. There really isn't much to argue about all of this when it comes to Donna Adelson. She was convicted of a capital crime in Florida, which means she's either going to the death chamber, which she's not, or she's going to spend the rest of her life in prison along with her son Charlie. Like Dave says, the apple does not fall far from the tree. And she doesn't look happy about it. If you ask me, she does not look all that thrilled for life in prison. Kathy, thank you so much for gifting the memberships. Appreciate you. Enjoy everybody who receives one of those. If, by the way, you are a member and you received one of these new memberships, stick around to the very end because I have a special announcement for everybody who's part of our membership group. And that goes to Beach Bum as well, who's been a member for 8 months, saying happy Sunday Fun Day, everybody. Heart, smiley face, heart. Nashay's an extraordinary machine. Yes, you are. Has been a member for 4 months. So many amazing questions. I couldn't agree more. All right. Again, big thanks to Dave Aronberg. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Whoops.
Hi, Josh and Courtroom Confidential listeners. This is about Wendi Adelson. If she goes to trial, can the prosecutors use recorded phone calls from the jail between Donna and Charlie that mention Wendi? Charlie specifically says he can't believe that Wendi drove by the crime scene soon after Dan was shot. Would that be allowed, or is that considered hearsay? They would be considered co-conspirators. So does that have anything to do with it being allowed? Since Wendi won't be testifying most likely, how can the prosecutors bring in other information that she testified to in other trials? She has several inconsistencies regarding driving on Trescott that day. How can the prosecutor enter that evidence? And a big factor is she drove to the scene, saw police cars blocking the house and on the driveway, crime scene tape blocking off the area. Yet she didn't stop to ask what's happening or call her children's school to see if they're okay, nor did she contact Dan to see if he's okay and what's going on at his house. Very suspicious. How can these pieces of evidence be entered without her testifying? She has derivative immunity. Does that only apply if she testifies? Or can law enforcement and other witnesses testify about things Wendi said on the witness stand to impeach her or show an inconsistency? Thanks so much. This is Dawn from Fairfax, Virginia.
Dawn from Fairfax, Virginia. Let's put Fairfax on the map. Who did I say, everybody? Do we have the smartest community on YouTube? I think absolutely. These are such great questions. These are like law school type questions. I could easily see a second or third year law student being asked these types of questions with this fact scenario. So thank you so much, Dawn from Fairfax. Talking about Wendi, Charlie, Donna. By the way, Donna is going to be sentenced tomorrow, and we're going to be putting that on our Courtroom Confidential live trials channel for all of you to watch. So set your calendars tomorrow on our sister channel, CC Live Trials. We will have the sentencing. You can all watch it together, and we can be in the chat and react to the whole thing. She's not looking too happy about it. So to Dawn's question, first of all, can they use the recorded conversations between Donna and Charlie in the trial, a potential trial against Wendi? If Wendi were to be arrested and tried for this, can they use those conversations? And Dawn, you kind of answered your own question. It is a hearsay issue. She has a right to cross-examine and confront all of the witnesses against her. And if an out-of-court statement is being used and offered for the truth of the matter asserted, that becomes hearsay. So Donna and Charlie are having an out-of-court conversation. They're making out-of-court statements, and they're offering it, in this case, for the truth of the matter asserted. That's flat out hearsay, and no exception applies. And she would have the right to, even if Charlie were to testify to these conversations, there might be hearsay issues there because he'd still be talking about out-of-court conversations between him and an uncharged party. Now, Dawn says, well, what about the idea that they're co-conspirators? Does that change anything? And the answer is no. In fact, I'll give you an interesting situation. Let's say Charlie, Donna, and Wendi had all been put on trial together. Would they be able to play the tapes against Charlie, between Charlie and Donna against Wendi? No. What they'd have to do is have separate juries. And they do this all the time when you've got multiple defendants where there are statements that can be used against some defendants and not others. So they'd have to have a jury for Donna and Charlie, and they could play the Donna and Charlie tapes against them, because they would then both be party admission exception to the hearsay rules. They could have those admissible against the both of them. But the Wendi jury would have to step out of the room for that playing of those tapes. And they couldn't hear that because they cannot use that hearsay against Wendi, because those are out-of-court statements that she cannot cross-examine those people about the statements unless Charlie or Donna were to take the stand and talk about conversations so that she could cross-examine them. Sorry, I'm just fact-checking myself. I think I got all that right. Then to Dawn's question about immunity, what can they use against her? They cannot use anything that she said on the stand against her, okay? That's part of the use immunity. So they can use anything she's ever said to law enforcement, anything she's ever said to another human being against her if she were to be put on trial. If she were to testify, they could cross-examine her with anything she's ever said, but they cannot use what she said on the stand against her or to impeach her, okay? And you might be saying to yourself, well, that doesn't seem fair. Well, that's part of the immunity agreement, is that they can't use it, and they can't backdoor it then somehow later. But she's already kind of cornered herself as far as what she can say anyways, because she's given statements to the police similar to what she said on the stand anyways. So I'm not all that concerned about her coming to court if she is charged, taking the stand and somehow giving some wildly different story that the prosecutors would have trouble handling. I mean, her story's going to be, I didn't know anything. I didn't plan this. I wasn't a part of it. And that's what she's always said. So I hope that answers your questions, Dawn. It is a fascinating hypothetical, and we'll see if it becomes a reality if this ever happens that they arrest her. I am in the if you're asking me to place bets, I am in a group of folks who thinks that an indictment will probably be forthcoming here. I can't imagine, with the evidence that we already know, that they would just kind of let her walk. All right, great question. Are we enjoying this? Are you guys enjoying yourselves? Are you juiced? We've talked about the Adelsons. We've talked about Zarutska and Kelsey Fitzsimmons. What else have we done? Ruth Miller, Luciano Frattolin. We got a caller from Hawaii, a caller from Alaska. This is a good day. Did I tell you a good Sunday? Objection 403. Thank you so much for the super chat. Says, Josh, thank you for always helping us understand, but why do judges wear those wigs in South Africa? That is a great question. I don't know. Call in, leave us a message, and I'll answer it next week because I need to do a little research. I think they do it just to look smart. I think they still wear them in England too. Not sure. The barristers, do the barristers still wear them in England? All right, I've lost my place. The whole thing, the wheels are coming off. Where am I here? We just answered a question from Dawn. All right, I found my place. Everybody calm down. Here we go.
Good morning, Josh. Granny Detective here from Calgary. I'm sorry I missed the actual live presentation last night with Dr. Patrice Berry. I did have to watch the Blue Jays game, so I apologize for not watching live, but it was an amazing show, and Dr. Patrice Berry answered every question that I had. So I don't really have a question, but I do want to say that it's Canadian Thanksgiving this weekend, and I do want to thank you, your crew, all the people out there, just for everybody, just to be kind and gentle and just spread love, not hate. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving to everybody. Love the show. Thank you.
Granny Detective from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Let's put you on the map. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Appreciate you calling in. Appreciate the kind words. Appreciate always hearing from you. Appreciate you putting Canada on the map. Those are all my Thanksgivings to you, Granny Detective. And your Blue Jays. Your Blue Jays are doing pretty good. They're in the playoffs. They're going to be playing the Mariners tonight. Here on Courtroom Confidential, we don't have favorites. We don't root for one team over the other. I understand there's some other good baseball teams playing. I think the Brewers are playing some team from Los Angeles. So good luck to everyone and wherever you're from. But like I said, we are equal opportunity for all teams here on Courtroom Confidential, and we certainly don't play favorites to one team in particular. Thank you again, Granny Detective, and good luck this evening. All right, let's keep it rolling along here.
Hello, Josh. This is Carrie in Tallahassee, Florida. I was calling because a couple of weeks ago you were talking about the Aaron Spencer case and how it was pretty much, unprecedented what they're doing. But I wanted to bring up a case from the 80s, I believe, with Gary Plauché, and his last name is Plauche. Maybe that sounds right. Anyway, his son was abducted and assaulted by his karate teacher who took him out of state. and he was found by the police. He was brought back. The boy was okay, and then the man was brought back, the karate teacher, and they were bringing him through the airport, and the dad, Gary, stepped out and shot him and killed him on live TV because there was local news there recording the whole thing. But the point of all of that is that he did not spend any time in prison. He got a suspended sentence in like community service or something. So it has happened before, and they didn't really seek any kind of extreme penalties or anything. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Carrie from Tallahassee, Florida. Let's put you and Tallahassee on the map. Thank you so much for calling in. This is a throwback to a very, very interesting case. I love the birds chirping in the background too. Whatever paradise you find yourself there in Tallahassee, Carrie. Thank you for calling in. Great callback. So we're talking. Carrie brings this up because we're talking about the Aaron Spencer case is about to go to trial. There's Aaron. There's his turkeys. Great guy. I've said this before. I think he deserves a key to the city rather than to be criminally prosecuted. But he is being criminally prosecuted for second-degree murder, by the way, for murdering this man who had abducted his 14-year-old daughter. And Aaron happened to find him in the middle of the night, stop him, order him out of a car. The man, according to Aaron, didn't let his daughter get out and then lunged at him. So Aaron shot him dead. And the prosecutors there in Arkansas have said, well, we're going to prosecute you for that. And I think that they're making the wrong move. And I'm going to leave the evidence to play itself out. But I think, by the way, Aaron is running for sheriff. He has put his hat in the ring to run for sheriff. Yeah, Susie says he's running for sheriff, and I think he can win. And good for him. And I hope he does. And I hope he changes the way law enforcement is done there in his community in Arkansas. But this is a great callback because Carrie says, well, is this similar to, or what can we learn from a very famous case from the 80s by the name of a man named Gary Plauché, who shot and killed a man by the name of Jeffrey Doucette? In 1984, Gary's son was molested by this man, Jeffrey Doucette. And he had been, they said the molestation had been taking place over a year. Gary became aware of it. They had arrested him in, I think, Southern California, and were flying him back to Louisiana, to the Baton Rouge airport. And in the airport, this is video, as Carrie had pointed out, this is news footage of him being walked through the airport when he had landed and they were about to take him to custody. And local news crews were there just kind of covering it as they do any story. But what they didn't know is that hiding by those telephone booths there, and we're not showing you the video. You guys can go find it. It's all over the internet. But that man back there in the hat is Gary Plauché. He had waited there at the airport with a gun in hand. And when Jeffrey Doucette walks by, he puts one round right into the side of his head and shoots him dead in front of law enforcement and the cameras and everybody else. He's apprehended, he's arrested, but he gets no jail time. He gets 7 years suspended for manslaughter, meaning he wasn't actually sentenced to prison. It was suspended time. He was put on probation. His attorneys had argued kind of a theory of temporary insanity at the time. But I think we all know that what this came down to was everybody just kind of got it. They just kind of understood what else could this man have done? I mean, he is it the right thing? No. Is it murder? Yeah. Is this even eye for an eye? No, this man didn't murder his son. He molested his son, and that's a horror and a nightmare and nothing any parent would want to live through. And I hope You know, they've interviewed him recently and he said he'd do it again. And I think we all kind of get it. And I think the same thing goes for Aaron Spencer. But Aaron Spencer's, I think, even different, because we're not saying this was cold-blooded. This is murder here. This is cold-blooded murder. This is lying in wait, shoot a man as he's walking by. Aaron Spencer has a legit self-defense or defense of others argument to be made. This man has already exhibited violence towards his family. He's now kidnapped his daughter in the middle of the night. Aaron Spencer, according to his testimony, tried to end the situation peacefully, non-violently, involved the police. But in the end of the day, he did what he had to do. And I imagine if you ask Aaron Spencer, would he do it again? He said, absolutely. Any day, anytime, defending his daughter. And I applaud the man. I think the man's a hero. Unless there's some information out there we don't know about, I believe the man's a hero. Afton says, big difference here. Aaron's daughter was in danger or imminent harm. Absolutely. Defense of others. Even Aaron, I think it could be argued, is in danger if in fact he was lunging at him. Therapist, says, gosh, that's so hard to put words to why that's okay, even though it's not okay. I get it. I think at the end of the day, we all kind of, some of these things, there's the law that's on the books, and then there's just kind of our moral compass that we all carry. And sometimes those two don't entirely line up perfectly. Preach, Josh, says D. Bullard. Well, thank you. Thank you all for putting up with me and listening. All right, let's keep it moving along here. Don't yell at me, Kaylin. I'm pressing all the buttons.
Happy Sunday Fun Day, Joshua and CC crew. This is my favorite day of the week because of y'all. This is Wendy from Nicholasville, Kentucky. I have two things. First, a comment, then a question. My comment is that my friend's daughter was on the University of Kentucky stunt team with Miss Lakin Snelling. So if you want any hot tea, let me know. And my question is, the murders that happened back in July at the Devil's Den State Park, I think it was, in Arkansas, where Clinton and Kristen Brink were stabbed to death by the former teacher. I think his last name was McGann. Can't remember his full name right now. But anyways, I was wondering what's going on with that case. Like, it's been like dead silent. You can hear crickets since that happened. Know he was arrested, and that's all I know. So if you have any information on that, I would greatly appreciate it. Have a great Sunday Fun Day, and if you want any hot tea on Miss Snelling, let me know. Thank you for all you do.
Wendy from Nicholasville, Kentucky. Wendy, if you're here, I see everybody in the chat and they're saying spill the tea. They want the tea and they want it now, and they want it as hot as they can get it. So start spilling. Thank you so much, Wendy, for calling in. You're talking about this horrific case from Arkansas, the murders of Clinton and Kristen Brink by this man, and his name is Andrew James McGann, McGann. Yeah, and just kind of a premeditated yet random act of violence. Didn't know these folks. Nothing about them. Can we decipher why he targeted them? They had their young daughters with them. They heroically saved their lives. But he stabs them both to death. He was a prior teacher. I mean, the whole thing is just bizarre beyond belief. This took place back in July in Devil's Den, Arkansas, kind of an outdoor area there. He's been charged with 2 counts of murder. And he is, according to prosecutors there, eligible for the death penalty, and they intend to seek the death penalty. It's a state park there in Arkansas. Horrible case. Now those baby girls are going to grow up without their parents. Never understand this kind of stuff. The reason you don't know much about it, Wendi, is because the judge ordered a gag order on this case. Gag orders, I don't know where to go on these things. In one case, in one sense, I understand the interest in protecting or controlling the amount of media coverage on a case so that you don't influence a potential jury pool. You don't want to have problems with venue. You don't want to have problems with bias. You want to make sure that this case is handled properly. You get a jury that doesn't bring any baggage in, and you can get a conviction. And the case, I understand all of that. But I feel like when you start to put these really severe gag orders into place, it has a backfiring effect almost, and that people start to speculate and they start to get curious and they start to run rampant with conspiracy theories. And we saw a little bit of that taking place in the Brian Kohberger case. We've seen it in other cases that are kind of high profile, smaller communities, not a lot of information being released, and people start to really wonder what is in fact taking place behind the curtain. So that's why there's a gag order in place. But the next court date is going to be on November 14th. Hopefully we'll get some more information. Hopefully knowing the interest in this case, there will be more put on the record in court. But as far as statements being made by the parties outside of court, we're not going to hear much about it. It's unfortunate. And I think unnecessary, and I think overkill in this day and age. I think transparency, shedding light on things is probably the better way of handling them. And you can always find yourselves jurors who just don't know anything about it, in my humble opinion. Thank you so much, Wendi, though, from Nicholasville, Kentucky. And thank you so much for the kind words. That was very, very nice of you. All right, let's keep it rolling here.
Hello, Joshua. Hello, CC crew. Happy Sunday Fun Day. My question is in regards to Judge Everett's denial of Donna Adelson's post-trial motions. Specifically, he referenced many sidebars, excerpts from many sidebars in which Donna Adelson's attorneys were seemed to be less than stern, almost to the point of mildly coddling her when she seemed to want to listen to them in regards to whether or not she needed to make a decision about testifying or not. As if she didn't make a decision, it would change the circumstances somehow. I don't know. But my question to you is, have you had clients like that? Shouldn't they have just put their foot down and say, you need to say something? I don't know. But it just seems like it was a lot of deference to Donna where there maybe shouldn't have been. All right. I hope Sunday is good for everyone. Bye for now.
Nishay from Philadelphia, PA. Thank you so much for calling in. Always love to hear from you. Let's put Philadelphia on the map. Great question. Talking about the murderous matriarch from Miami, Donna Adelson. And was she being coddled? Nishay's an extraordinary machine says, hello, me. Well, hello, you. Thank you for the great question. Thank you for putting Philly on the map. Sorry for the playoff difficulties there. Sorry, not sorry. Put that graphic back up again, Kaylin. Oh yeah. Sorry about that. I forgot that the playoffs were going on. Anyhow, was Donna being coddled by her defense team? I think absolutely. I mean, this woman, remember, we had a lot of hearings about her diet, her ear canals, her weight gain, her, this woman, like I said, the way I describe her to other people is she probably holds a record in many Miami area restaurants for sending back food more than anybody else. This is a person who's lived an incredibly entitled life her entire life. And how do I know that? I know that because when she didn't get her way about where her grandkids lived, the idea that she would have to spend her life getting on a plane to go from Miami to Tallahassee to visit her grandkids was so unacceptable that she was willing to kill their father. That's how entitled this person is. So, do you imagine she was a quote unquote handful for her defense attorneys? I'm sure she was. And I'm sure there was a lot of coddling. Now, Nishay's question is kind of like, is that right? And have I ever had to deal with that? I have had to deal with that with clients who are incredibly demanding. And my way of handling it is I don't put up with it. If you want to fire me, fire me. But I am not going to allow you certainly to bully me, nor to browbeat me into giving you a bad defense. And that's probably my biggest problem. I don't care if you're rude, but if you're causing your case to fall apart because of your rudeness, I'm not going to stand for it. I'll tell you a little story. I had a case with a man who was suffering from, we can call it compulsive control issues. And he had no reason in the world to do this. He had plenty of money, but he decided that he wanted to rob a bank. And he did. And he basically did it because he couldn't, like I said, control his impulses and thought it would be fun to get away with it. Well, he didn't get away with it. And now he was looking to go to prison. But he was, because of his kind of mental issues and because of his control freak issues, incredibly difficult to deal with. And whenever we were in court, he was constantly in my ear and constantly, tell him this, do this, argue that. What's this? Why is that happening? And I had worked out a fantastic deal for this guy. I mean, he was looking at going to prison for years, and I had worked it out that he was going to do just a couple of months of jail time. I told him I'd have him out by Thanksgiving. And this was in the summer, and, phenomenal result for what he had done. And we're in court and we're going through the plea, and he starts chirping in my ear and he won't stop. And finally the judge is like, is this happening? And the judge can say, obviously he's got problems with this plea deal. I'm going to remove the deal and set this for trial. And the judge was nearly at the point of doing that. And I turned to him through the little fencing there between the custodies and the attorneys in court. And it is about a loud and angry a whisper as I could. I said, if you don't shut the F up, this whole thing is going to fall apart. Do you understand that? And it was like, I think he needed that moment to snap himself out of it and realize that he needed to STFU. And he did. And we were able to get through the plea deal. But you just reminded me of it, Nishay, because sometimes, tough love is all part of being a good defense attorney, I think, sometimes. Anyhow, thank you, Nishay, who's an extraordinary machine, if you haven't heard, from Philadelphia, for calling in with that question. All right. We're down to the final three here, everybody. Sorry about that. Tears all around, but it's the truth. Where are we going to next? Here we go.
Hello, this is Linda from Wasilla, Alaska. Wanted to be sure that our state is pointed out on your map. And yes, Josh, we are part of the continental United States. Maybe not contiguous, but we are on the same continent. A question for you has to do with choosing juries. With all of the publicity that these high-profile cases get online these days, I'm wondering, would like to hear your perspective on choosing juries. Thanks. I'll be watching on Sunday.
Linda putting Alaska on the map 2 times today for Wasilla, Alaska. And I am properly chastened. Linda, thank you so much. You are right. I said continental. You are on the same continent, just not part of the contiguous United States. I stand corrected. Never let it be said I won't apologize for my mistakes. Jay, good to see you, my friend. Can't believe Josh would curse. Never in a million years would such filth exit my mouth. KLB says that is 2 from Alaska, both from Wasilla. If I heard correctly, and you did hear correctly, Alaska coming in strong today. So thank you so much, Linda, for calling in. And a great question, too. What is my perspective on choosing juries? I will tell you this. A sad, frustrating, shocking part about trials, most trials that you may not understand, trials that are not put on TV, is how little time the attorneys get to speak to jurors ahead of time. I've had situations where a judge has given me 10 minutes to voir dire 40 people. And there's no way you can get to know all of those people. I think a common misnomer in jury selection is the idea that you are choosing your jury. You're really not. You're not choosing. You don't get to sit around and go, I really like juror number 7 and 14 and 32, and I want to make sure they end up on my jury. If you like them, odds are the other side doesn't. Odds are the other side's going to kick them. So really what you're doing is you're eliminating your jury. You're making sure that the people that you feel are wacky, are got some biases, are just not helpful to your side, are kicked off. And you just got to try to prevent those people from getting on. And then with the time that you have, if you're not identifying who those folks are, I think you're doing your best to just kind of introduce yourself to the jurors and hopefully get them to understand that you're a good person and a person who can be trusted, because you don't have a lot of time. And you try to work in some of the issues that may come up in your trial as cleverly as you can, but really you are doing your best to just try to make sure that whoever ends up on that jury is not somebody that you're going to regret being on that jury for the next couple of weeks. And what ends up happening is you ask questions. Please raise your hand if you feel this way. Please raise your hand if you feel that way. Well, you've got different types of people in a group of strangers, and those are the people who will raise their hand and happily talk, and then the other ones who just try to hide amongst the crowd and don't raise their hand and don't ever volunteer any information. And by the time you've kicked out everybody else, you're usually left with those folks. I don't know how many times I've sworn a jury, the judge has sworn them all in, and you take a look and you see 12 sets of eyes staring back at you, and you're like, I don't know anything about any of these people. That's usually who ends up on your jury. Great question, Linda from Wasilla, Alaska, which is part of the continental United States, just not contiguous United States. Don't get it twisted, Ritter. All right. Jay, thank you so much, my friend, for gifting that membership. Appreciate you being a part of the crew here. All right, let's keep it moving.
Hey, it's Luce K. Mayo, Humboldt, Tennessee. Happy Sunday Fun Day, and hope you're feeling better. Joshua, Tiffany, Kaylin, Moz, crew, chat, everyone. All right, I heard the call. You needed more voicemails. So, Joshua, let's talk about Florida accused murderer Daisy Link and her never met before fellow male inmate, last name of DePaz, who conceived a baby girl using air vents, basically kiting his biological sample to her. Are there any charges pending for either one or both of these fine human beings, said with full sarcasm, related to this impregnation? Look forward to your answer. Thanks. Have a great Sunday Fun Day, y'all. Bye.
Alicia K. Mayo, from Humboldt, Tennessee. Thank you so much for calling in. Of course, you would identify probably the most embarrassing topic to try to discuss on YouTube here, but this is a fascinating story. This case is wild, says Sonia. Yes, it is. So here's what happened. This woman here, Daisy Link, she's accused of murder, by the way. She's starting a murder trial. October 8th, in fact, she's already started it for murdering a man by the name of Pedro Jimenez back in June of 2022 in Florida. Okay. While she's waiting for her trial, she begins a romantic relationship with a man by the name of, and I don't know how you pronounce this, Joan, Joan DePaz, who is also awaiting a murder trial. Two alleged murderers finding love. They start to, through the air vents, exchange letters and photographs, and then they decide to take their relationship to the next level. And Alicia K. Mayo describes it probably best, that she says she wants to have his baby, so he transfers over, wrapped in saran wrap, a sample, biological sample, says AKM, that she, through a feminine applicator, is able to use that sample, and in fact, miraculously does get pregnant. And in June of 2024, she gives birth to a baby girl. And like I said, she is now on trial for murder. And it is an amazing story and a horrific story. And also, I think, an incredibly tragic story, because now you've got this baby girl whose both parents are going to be perhaps convicted murderers. She's going to be raised by, it sounds like, his parents are raising the baby girl. I don't know. I mean, you know, life is always a blessing and a miracle. And you know what I would love for this baby girl to go on to accomplish amazing things. And what an incredible story that would be, how she came to this world. But just wild stuff. Thank you, Alicia K. Mayo from Humboldt, Tennessee, for reminding us all of this one. All right, everybody. Tears and sadness all around. It's our last call of the day. I hope you had fun. I did. Who is taking us home?
Hi, Josh. This is Monica calling in from Omaha, Nebraska, home of the College World Series. I watched your Friday morning live, and I also watched the defense case on Friday, where they had the doctors for Bionca Ellis, and they really made a very strong case about this woman's illness. With that in mind, how does Ruth Miller get to claim insanity if her beliefs are her beliefs? If that was her belief when she put Vincent in the lake, is that her claiming insanity? Thanks for listening. Love the show and the shirts.
Thank you so much, Monica from Omaha, Nebraska, home of the Little League World Series. Yes, great question. I'm so glad we had Dr. Berry on, because we talked a lot about these issues, and we're probably going to have her on again to talk about them again, because it is fascinating. Talking about Bionca Ellis, who's claiming insanity. She had a defense expert testify on her behalf that she was, in fact, unable to appreciate the consequences of her actions, unable to appreciate the difference between right and wrong at the time that she stabbed 3-year-old Julian Wood. Rough stuff to think about what that mom lived through and what she'll continue to live through. And also Ruth Miller, accused of drowning her son, Vincent. I think he was age 4 or 5, drowning that little boy to death. And again, the question becomes her statements. Let's just take it in it, not to get overly complicated. Her statement openly, unabashedly to law enforcement is that she did this to give him to God, that he's in a better place and that it's beautiful and that she gave her son over to God. Now, the argument could be made, and her defense attorneys are going to be making, that someone saying that and believing that cannot appreciate that what she did was wrong, that what she did was either illegal or morally wrong. Where the prosecution is going to have a difficult time is saying, well, she may have believed it was what God wanted, but did she know it was a crime? And did she do it in spite of that? And if she knew that it was a crime and she knew that people would think it was wrong, but she did it because of her faith, that still doesn't qualify for criminal insanity. Because you can do something for your faith and feel like God wants you to do it, and also at the same time understand that it's murder. And if they can explain that to jurors, then she might not win this insanity claim. We shall see. Another fascinating case. Usually when you see these insanity claims come up, in my view, they don't really qualify. But these two cases, Bionca and Ruth Miller, might actually have some substance to their arguments. Thank you, Monica, so much. Monica from Omaha, Nebraska, for asking the excellent question. And thank you to everybody for asking your amazing questions. All right, we have some announcements, but before we get to those announcements, I'd like to play something for you. Before we get into the cases for the week, I just wanted to share with you a story that happened to me at CrimeCon this year. If you're a follower of this channel, you already know, but I lost temporarily my passport. I've got it back now. Thank you very much. But while it was gone, it is such an unnerving feeling to know that your personal information could be in the hands of another person. But what brought me a little peace of mind was knowing that I had identity theft insurance through Aura, our first ever sponsor. If you've ever wondered how scammers get your information and why your inbox is full of junk, this is why. Data brokers collect and sell your information without your permission, and they make billions doing it. And that is why we are proud to partner with Aura. Aura does the hard work for you. They scrub your information from the internet, protecting it from those shady sites and making sure that your information is kept safe. But it's more than just data removal. It's also about digital security. That's why I felt such comfort even when my passport was lost. You get dark web alerts, bank fraud monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all in one app. Try Aura today, free for 14 days at aura.com/courtroomconfidential. It's free to try, it protects you, and it helps support the show. Please check it out. Who loses their passport? Honestly, get it together. All right. Let me tell you about the website. If you go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, if you've been watching today and you say, those were all great questions, but I've got a question. Well, go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, click on leave us a question, and you can record a voicemail that we will answer live on our next Sunday Fun Day. If you saw people getting free memberships gifted to them and you think to yourself, well, I want one and I didn't get one, then you can join the crew yourself if you go to become a member on thecourtroomconfidential.com. And you can buy, if you're looking at this shirt and you're saying that's a lovely looking shirt, Ritter, I'd like to get myself one. What color is this, by the way? Any guesses? Trick question. It's black. It's one of our originals, but it's a special edition because can you see on the back there? It's one of our What's Happening Here shirts. So if you want to walk around your neighborhood and having everybody think that you're thoroughly confused, you can get one of these t-shirts at the shop at thecourtroomconfidential.com. Please check it out. Midnight Confidential says cat flap carnage. Black Witter, black. I like that. All right. What did you miss on Friday? Black Letter Law. Very good. We had our weekly roundup. We talked about Corey Ridgens and Mark Sanchez and Bionca Ellis and all of the cases that took place this week. Please check it out. It's up on the website now. That was live. We did that one live on Friday, by the way, which is going to kind of become our new thing. We're going to give these live Friday weekly roundups a try. Then finally, stay tuned. Monday, tomorrow, is the sentencing of Donna Adelson. Go to Courtroom Confidential Live Trials. That's our sister channel. Subscribe. Hit the notification so you don't miss anything. That will be at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Watch it live, Donna Adelson sentencing. Also tomorrow, that evening, back on the main channel, we are going to have our true crime docket live at 5 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Oh, there you go. We're going to be talking about Donna, and that's Shanna Gardner and Courtney Clenny. A bunch of stuff coming up this week. It's going to be a busy week in true crime. Check that out tomorrow, live 5 p.m., 8 p.m. Pacific. Wednesday, we're doing Wednesday Night Live, and we have a special guest joining us. That will be Joel Waldman from Surviving the Survivor. And we're going to be going through the Donna Adelson sentencing and what are his thoughts on that. And now that that case is, he's been living with that case for a while. He knows the family, the Markell family well. Get their thoughts on all of that. And talking a little bit about Courtney Clenny, live 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, back here on the main channel with Joel Waldman, Wednesday Night Live. Sunday, we're not going to have Sunday Fun Day next week, but don't despair. Don't get upset. Don't throw anything at your computer or TV, because conversations are back. We needed our royal flush completed for the behavior panel, and we finally made it happen. The fourth member, Scott Rouse, we sat him down and he answered some questions and told us about his incredible journey. And by the way, it went in a direction I had no idea. This guy has led such a fascinating life. We had a great conversation. So this Sunday, at that same time, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, we're going to be releasing our conversation, the latest in our conversation series with Scott Rouse from the behavior panel. Be here to watch it live. And then finally, if you are a new member, new to our membership and in the classified and above membership level, we have a monthly members only live stream. This one will be coming up. There's all the membership levels. This one will be coming up on Saturday, October 25th. That's at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for classified and above. It's a great time. We have fun, and you get special appearances by the Queen of B-roll, Kaylin, and my lovely wife, Tiffany, who stop in and share some stories. So check it out. Saturday, October 25th. CrimeCon's coming up May 29th through 31st in Las Vegas. If you want to go, we've got you covered. Press, enter the word courtroom, all caps, all one word, at checkout for a 10% discount. And we hope to see you there. We're going to be there for sure. Molly G says, thanks, everyone. It's been fun. I hope it has. I've had a good time. All right, everybody. Thank you to Afton and Sonia, Kathy, and therapists, our mods for taking care of all of us and holding our hands. And thank you to Kaylin for everything that you do, for making this run so smoothly, and to Tiffany for being the best thing that ever happened to me. Have a great rest of your Sunday, everybody. Watch some baseball, watch some football, and we will see you all tomorrow night. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.